The Emperor has entrusted me with building a colony. I shall send my steward out, and he shall build me residences across the land. And in those residences we shall employ farmers. And we will train those farmers to become citizens, and then merchants. And they will work for the state, and we shall take care of them. But if they do not work, they must feed themselves. This is the colony, and we are the Colonists.
Taking a look at the Colonists, to start out, this is not everything that is in the box, but it is a good amount of what is in there. This is what you would need to pull out if you were just going to play one era, possibly two with a few more extra things. I'm not going to cover the entire game as that would simply take too long, but I am going to take you through the basics of the rules, because the game itself, while it looks overwhelming on the table, is fairly simple. The game is played over a series of eras, and that's between 1 and 4, and you decide at the start how many you want to do. And then at the beginning of an era, you're going to turn over the era card, which is going to set out some things to do at the beginning, and also set what the fee will be in case you need to pay one during the round. After this, you are going to move into the start of a year. Now, each era is 5 years, and that's split into 2 half years. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to turn a market card up. A market card is something that will define what the actions will be on the markets in this community. The next thing that you're going to do is turn up 3 of the city tiles here face up, because those are going to let you know what's going to be coming at the end of this year. You will get 3 actions on your turn, and you'll do those consecutively, and then play will pass to the next player. In order to take an action, you're simply going to move your steward here, and in later rounds you'll have more than one steward, but to start out you've just got the one. The only rules about this is you must move to something adjacent, and wherever you move you must be able to take the action. If you can't take the complete action, then you cannot move there. Also, no matter where you are on the board, you are allowed to jump back to a market. But again, you must take an action on the market itself. Now, the cool thing about the market is that will change each year, and it will be a choice of actions. For example, here you have a sell action, you have a resource gain action, and then you have some sort of building action. At the start of the game, there also was these colonies that were drawn out that are going to give you additional things that you can add on throughout the game. There are 9 included in the game, and 4 will be randomly selected at the start. And if you play through past the 3rd era, a 5th one will come out as well. On the player boards here, you are limited to your storage spaces and your warehouse spaces. Anytime you need to pay for something, you must be paying out of storage. Now, there's this thing with the buffers, where you have a buffer, goods in warehouse, goods in storage. I'm not going to get into that. It is probably the weirdest thing in the game, but it's not that difficult. You just need to remember that if you're going to pay for something, you have to pay out of storage, and it must be in storage before you take the action that required you to pay. In addition, when you move out to certain things, it's going to allow you to pick up these improvement cards. For example, if the blue player with their first action were to move here, he would pick up 1 coin. And now coin, while it is money, it is also just victory points. It is not used for anything else in the game. So that would be the first, and the second would be to draw 2 of these cards. Now, these cards go into your hand, and you can only ever have 6 of them. The only way to get rid of cards is to play them, and they will give you things that possibly will give you better versions of things out on, or possibly just resources. So these would go into my hand. Now, the only way to play them is to go to a tile that allows you to play a card. So for the second action, I could come to this developer, which would first allow me to take 2 tools, And the tools are an unlimited resource. You can have as many of those on your board as you wish, and then I'm allowed to play a card. So in this example, I decided to play the Ruin card, which allows me to get 2 brick. Now the thing is I have nowhere to put the brick, so I would need to possibly throw something out to get it, and then that would go away. You can get more storage by taking certain actions, such as here the builder. This builder allows you to build storage sheds, which are these right here, and they go into this spot. And you can do it up to 3 times while you're on it. If it has a number like a 3x or a 1x, that means you are allowed to do it up to that number of times. If it does not have one, you are allowed to do it any number of times. Once you build a storage shed, then you now have additional, and these can be upgraded as well to go from 2 to 3 and things like that. Once a player has done their 3 actions, then it will move to the next player until all players have taken their turn, and then if it's the first half of the year, you'll move into the second half and repeat. If it's the final half of the year, then you move into the end of year. First, you would check for the new starting player token, if someone had picked this up, possibly by going maybe to the head office, things like that. Then the new starting player would distribute these 3 tokens out there. And in doing so, they can place them anywhere they want as long as they touch at least 2 other tiles' edges. And you're probably just going to want to put them out there in some way that's important to your strategy or opposing to what you think your opponents are trying to do. From here, you're allowed to redistribute your workers. Now, I didn't really cover how that works, so I'm going to go into it real quick back a little bit. On these tiles and your building tiles, you have a little thing here that shows a worker, and you need to be able to have somebody working it in order for it to be active. So while earlier I built this storage shed, I didn't actually have access to it because I didn't put a farmer on it. So if I had a farmer on it, now it's available to me. During the end of the phase, a year, is when you're allowed to redistribute. So I could take him off and put him back. You're allowed to move from the residences to buildings and things like that throughout the game, but you're not allowed to unemploy them during a round. So here I have a forester house, and I have a worker here, and I have a worker here. So now those are done. And later you'll have buildings that require these citizens and some that require merchants. After this, you're going to do the Sustenance Phase. Now during Era 1, that's not really going to be an issue because you're really just going to have farmers until late in it anyway, and farmers don't require any sort of upkeep. Citizens will require upkeep if you have them employed in terms of food, and merchants will require food and clothing. The important thing to note is you do not have to do this though unless they are currently working for you. If for some reason you can't afford to feed anybody or feed a worker, they would need to go back home before resolving that portion. After that, you'll do the production phase, which in this example I have right here, this forester house would gain 2 wood, and I need to have somewhere to put it. Luckily, I have someone working this storage shed, and the smithy always gains me 3 tools, so we would gain another 3 tools. After this, you move into the beginning of a new phase. Again, at the beginning of the next phase, we would turn over the next market card. These would have already been placed out, and we would flip over the next 3 tiles. You are able to also upgrade throughout the game. You'll notice these holes right here. You are able to upgrade these spots in terms of adding in more storage and more warehouse space. The game does tell you to keep the original punch-outs in case this bothers you. It doesn't really bother me. Final scoring of the game is pretty simple. It's on this pad here, a la Caverna, something like that, where you're just going to add up the dollar amounts of the various buildings you've built or embassies that you've built that have given you access to different things. And then you're going to, any cards that possibly have values on them as well, and that will give you a base score. And then you're going to get points for your workers. Now, they are only going to get points if you are employing them. So in this case, I have 2 farmers who are currently employed, so they would get 2 points each. Any citizens that you have employed will gain you 6 points each, and any merchants that you have will gain you 16 points each. The game is over once you've reached either the end of the 4th round or the end of an era or the end of a 4th era, sorry, or the end of an era that you determined at the beginning of the game. Whoever has the most points is the winner. So that's a look at the Colonists. Now, to address the colony in the room, yes, this game is long, and yes, there is a lot in the box. All total, there's about 844 cardboard tokens, and that doesn't even count all the wooden components. So this game is intimidating to look at. However, that shouldn't scare you, because the game is actually really simple in terms of the actual mechanisms that make it up. Now, I didn't go into every little detail, because really the best thing in this game is that if you start in Era 1, the game will kind of teach you, because you start with that small community, that small city map, and you build onto it at the end of every year. It will get larger and larger, which is going to be a problem possibly if you're playing with players who have AP, if they're prone to that sort of thing. The further along in the game it goes, the more options they're going to have, and the more the downtime for the other players is going to increase. So I would be aware of that before playing the game. The game does come with a way to save your progress, but it's not really a save. Let's say you played Era 1 and 2 and you decided you wanted to pick it up later. Well, you figure out the current score, and then you kind of build from there when you come back to the game. But it's basically not the exact same as you had before. I would recommend, if you're going to do it, just take a picture, bag up all of the items from your particular board, and resume it from there. The one thing the save thing is nice for is it would allow you to play from a later era just to start a game. Say you only wanted to do a game with Era 3 and 4. You could do a certain number of points and basically build as if Era 1 and 2 had taken place, but everyone starts on the same thing as far as the point values. Now, there would be some AP issues there too, because people would be trying to min-max the numbers, and so there might be some issues, but it would be fun. As far as player counts in this game, the game is listed at 1 to 4 players, and that's fine. I don't know that I would want to play this game with 4 players ever again, because it goes on long. The game is already long in a 4-era game with 2 players. In a 4-player game with 4 eras, the game is you're going to need to set aside 6-7 hours for this game. The downtime is going to be a little ridiculous, so I wouldn't really recommend it. A 4-player game, maybe just do 1 or 2 eras, or 2 eras rather. A 2-player game, by all means, feel free to play the full 4, and I think that's where the game actually is best. I think the game actually is best as a 2-player game. As far as replayability goes, the game does have a fair degree of it, but after a while, people might try to figure out some of the puzzle, and it might become obvious, especially in Era 1, what you're going to do, which means eventually you might just want to skip Era 1 altogether. And I feel like I'm probably already at that point myself, where I'm going to do the exact same thing every time. There is a little variability in that you don't know what the first player is going to do as far as arrangement of the tiles coming out to the city, but you know which ones are coming out, so it's not going to change that. However, what does lend to the replayability is the fact that you have those other colonies that come out, and there's 9 in the game, and you put out 4 randomly, and you're not going to be able to take advantage of all of them. In fact, you're probably only going to be able to take advantage of 1 of them, maybe 2, and you can upgrade those as the things go. So that's going to adjust your strategy a bit and what you do and don't do. Overall, I really, really enjoy this game, but I worry that sometimes it might overstay its welcome if everyone hasn't been properly told how long the game is going to be, or if you're expecting it to go one length, it could overstay its welcome on the table, but I don't think it's going to overstay its welcome in your collection. Because of its length, it's going to be a game that you're not going to get to the table very frequently. Maybe 1, 2, 3 times a year, possibly after a while, so it's going to have some staying power in your collection. In addition, fans of Euro games who wanted something epic, this is that game. It has a simple rule set, but an epic feel. It's going to sprawl out on the table as you go through the eras. It's going to get larger and larger. When you're done, you're going to look down and you're going to feel like you accomplished something, that you built something worth building, and that is very fulfilling. So overall, it's a great game. I definitely recommend checking it out if epic games are your thing and medium heavier Euros are your thing, but this is something easy to teach. It does have a rather high price point, so that might deter you a little bit, but I personally am going to keep this one in my collection. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Colonists, and it's helped you decide if this might be okay for your collection, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.